Mapping the entity relationship model to a relational schema. While the entity relationship model is a nice way to represent the database, there is no way we can use it directly to store data in a database management system. The reason is that there are no entity relationship database management systems, but there are relational database management systems. Therefore, we need to translate the entity relationship model of the database to a relational schema. That is, to define the relations, the attributes, the keys, and the domains, as required by the relational model. Fortunately, there is a rather straightforward way of doing so, with rules on how to map entity types and relationship types into relations. Mapping entity types to relations is a very simple task. The steps are: for every entity type, we create a relation. Every single attribute of the entity type also becomes a relation attribute. The relational model does not have composite attributes. Therefore, for every composite attribute of the entity type we include all the individual components as different relation attributes. In this step, we lose the semantic information that these attributes are part of the composite attribute, but this does not have any consequences. The attributes that form the entity primary key make up the primary key of the relation. Mapping relationship types to relations is a bit more complicated, and there are different rules for many-to-many, many-to-one, and one-to-one relationship types. Mapping many-to-many relationship types to relations seems a bit more complex, but is still not difficult. The steps are: for every many-to-many relationship type, we create a relation having as attributes all the primary key attributes of the participating entity types. Every single attribute of the relationship type, if any, becomes an additional relation attribute. For every composite attribute of the relationship type, if any, we include all the individual components as different relation attributes. The primary key of the new relation that corresponds to the relationship type is the set of the primary keys of all the participating entities. For every participating entity type, the attributes that form the primary key of that entity type are a foreign key to the corresponding relation. Mapping many-to-one relationship types to relations is a bit easier, and does not involve the creation of another relation. The steps are: for every many-to-one relationship type, we include the primary key of the entity type on the one side, to the relation for the entity type on the many side. This newly added attribute or attributes become a foreign key to the relation of the entity at the one side. Finally, we include any attributes of the relationship type to the relation for the entity type on the many side. Essentially, the many-to-one relationship type is merged with the entity type in the many side of the relationship into one relation. Mapping one-to-one relationship types to relations is still easier. The steps are: we include the primary key of one of the entity types into the other entity type as a foreign key. We also include any attributes of the relationship type with it. Essentially, the one-to-one relationship type is merged with one of the two entity types. Alternatively, we can merge the entities types and the relationship type together, and form one relation for all of them. In this case, we select one of the entity types to provide its primary key as the primary key of the relation. Either selection is equally valid. As an example, we will map a rather simple entity relationship model to relations. The entity relationship model has two entity types, for employees and departments, and one many-to-one relationship type, expressing the works in relationship. First, we create the relation for the employee's entity type. The only complication is the existence of the composite attribute name having two components for first name and last name. We map this attribute to two attributes called first name and last name. Their combination is the primary key of the relation employees. Then, we map the relation for the department's entity type, which is very simple, as we just directly map the attributes. The primary key of the relation is the ID. Now we move on to the mapping of the relationship type for works in. The relationship type works in is a many-to-one relationship type. The entity type on the many side is employees, and the entity type on the one side is departments. Therefore, we do not form another relation, but we update the employees relation to include, as another attribute, the key of the department's relation. This new attribute is a foreign key to the department's relation. Please note that for clarity, we use a different name for this attribute. This is not a problem, as the attribute that are foreign keys do not have to use the same name as the key attribute of the other relation. Once we have the relational schema for our database, we can implement it in a relational database management system using the SQL language, which is the subject of a subsequent lesson.